Hey, welcome to Maxwell 3000 Productions. I am Maxwell 3000. Back with me, I have my pops, Wayne Carter. Pops, thanks again for being here with me to continue this conversation. How you been doing?
I'm doing all right. Had a good day at church today. Had our our annual Thanksgiving breakfast, so that was always a good turnout. So good stuff.
That is good. Yeah, we had a meal over at Peyton Road after service today, so it's always good to get fed. Uh, It's funny, kind of speaking of food. That's kind of what we were talking about last time we met. We was talking about some of Grandma's home cooking and
Yeah.
kind of reminiscing on that. I was really enjoying that. Um, what else can you tell me, kind of about what it was like around the house? I mean, what did y'all do in the evening? Did you have a TV in every room and Wi-Fi streaming 100 and something channels? What was going on in the evening?
Well, probably time I got to fourth or fifth grader, we had a TV, and it was, of course, it had an antenna, and I remember you could get the out of Nashville, we could pick up the CBS and the NBC station with the antenna turned one way, and you had to go turn the antenna a different way to get the ABC station. And that was pretty much the three stations that were available back in those days.
Okay, okay. Then what kind of programming was on? What did y'all watch?
What I recall, particularly on Monday evenings, Dad liked to watch Gunsmoke. Um, I remember on Sunday mornings before we go to church, there were a couple of gospel music type shows on, and those were always on Sunday mornings. Uh, Sometime during the week, Perry Mason, which was actually one of my heroes, uh, and if you know, he was a defense lawyer, and Gunsmoke was the cowboy. Uh, it's really all I really remember. I'm sure there were other things, but I don't recall. We didn't watch a lot of TV.
Yeah. What about the radio? Do you remember listening to the radio with them in the evenings? I remember even when I was around, they were still able to be listening to the Grand Ole Opry on the radio
And that would
uh,
have been Saturday night.
Saturday evenings. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was and music was a pretty big deal because it was the music that I remember growing up with would have been the old country stuff and the old country gospel, bluegrass gospel stuff. Um, Probably didn't listen to. Well, they may have listened to rock and roll. I don't remember that. I remember, when I got a little older, uh, I got a record player and was able to get. At that time, we had like 45 uh, single. Well, there was single, but there was a song on either side of the record. And then at some because you could get long play albums, but they were expensive. I couldn't afford those. And I really didn't start getting some long play albums till I probably got maybe in high school or college where I started earning a little money.
What kind of stuff did you listen to when you got your record player? Those 45s.
Yeah, and guess you got those things, but I think probably my favorite, and I still listen to a lot, is like Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Kind of uh, I don't know if you call them jazz or blues, but the horns. I like the
J-
horn songs.
Jazz fusion, I think, is kind of what
Yeah,
you might call that. Jazz
yeah,
fusion rock and roll.
yeah.
Yeah.
and Three
And
Dog Night.
Blood, Sweat, and Tears. They were pretty big time in the '60s. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really kind of surprising that they don't have more of a familiar name to folks because they were a really big name in the '60s, right?
Yeah, it was interesting too. I didn't know this till we moved to Cleveland, but the guy that was their like lead trumpet player was from Cleveland, Tennessee. Uh, can't recall his name right now. He'll come to me at some point, but uh,
Was he from there, or did he settle in Cleveland because of the Church of God of Prophecy?
well, I don't know that. I don't know that.
Because they were
Phil Driscoll.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if he was from here or ended up here, but I remember, when we moved over here in the '80s, that name come up, and of course, I remembered that because I liked that group.
Yeah.
Let's see, there was I think Three Dog Night was a big one that I enjoyed their stuff. Um, it was interesting. I was not a big Beatles fan at the time. I am now.
Huh.
And so their influence on me was there. I just didn't know I appreciated it until, and maybe some of the songs, resonate with me now.
Hmm. So the whole Beatlemania didn't necessarily strike you as they were coming across the pond in that whole wave.
I mean, I like them, but I never bought any of their stuff until, till I got adult later on. But I did buy the Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and I think I brought a Grand Funk Railroad live album. Like I said, Three Dog Night. I had several of theirs.
Well, that's some early progressive rock and roll for a young man in Middle Tennessee. I'd say that's pretty cool. Where did you get the exposure to that? Did they play that on the radio, or was it
Yeah,
just
I'd
something you
say,
picked up?
yeah, brother. He listened to the rock and roll, and back in those days, uh, I don't remember the station, but it was a station out of Nashville that he listened to was rock and roll. And of course, I was influenced by him, and so yeah. And then, of course, when you got to high school, that's what most everybody was listening to.
So it kind of seems like the country music was almost the older generation, and
Yeah. Oh yeah.
the younger generation was on the rock and roll.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's interesting. We talk a lot about music, and you and I we talk a lot about Hank Williams Sr. And then we talk about other guys later on, kind of in the '70s with that outlaw movement. Was there a shift in country music where it wasn't maybe as edgy as it had been before when Hank Williams Sr. was around, and kind of the development of that? Maybe you call it the Nashville sound with Eddie Arnold and Ray Price and all those guys.
Yeah, and so those guys you just mentioned, those would have been people that I listened to probably when I was a younger kid because mom and dad, that was their era. But I don't really know what mom and dad. Well, mom and dad listened to the Grand Ole Opry. I know that. But as far as the outlaw country and the ones that came after them, I don't remember being a big fan of any of that until later on in life.
Really?
I really, I really enjoy Willie Nelson and those guys now, but back when I was in my teens and 20s, it didn't appeal to me.
Hmm. Well, yeah, and I guess they kind of, like you said, they came more in the '70s, I guess. Um, and I don't really know. I remember Grandma and Granddad listening to a lot more, I guess, what I consider traditional country and bluegrass. Um, Hank Williams Sr. was kind of a big deal. Um, but then anybody that was on the Opry, they thought they had made it, right?
Well, they
That was
had.
big, and they had, yeah,
Yeah,
100% still,
yeah,
right, 100%,
yeah,
100.
yeah.
Well, that's cool.
I just remember uh, well, merely after I got in college, a couple of concerts that I went to. Like I said, I went to see Chicago, the group Chicago. I went to see them
When did you get
and
to see them?
in Nashville.
What do you remember? What year?
Had been 72, 73.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, Ike and Tina Turner saw them. That was enjoyed. That was again that time frame. Uh,
Early rock and roll stuff, yeah.
yeah. Um, $3 Night actually played at the State Fair back in the day. Uh, that was probably the main things I saw. Uh, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Did you get to notice or observe the development of rock and roll with, like Chuck Berry and Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis Presley? Did you get to kind of watch that, or did you kind of come later on because maybe during that time you were still listening to the stuff Grandma and Granddad were listening to, and then maybe introduced to the rock and roll stuff later? Because I'll tell you, I don't recall them being too keen on Elvis necessarily. Not that they talked bad about anybody, but that just wasn't what they listened
All
to.
right. Yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember a lot of that. Now, your mother and I actually went to see Elvis once uh, in North Carolina. I think it was just because it was Elvis, you
Yeah.
know. 'Cause I liked Elvis, but I was not a big fan of him. I'm trying to think. I don't remember a crossover. What I remember when they went to the disco stuff in like the late '70s. That lost me. I was just not a big disco type person. So, and at that time too, I was you know going to law school and trying to do all. So I didn't really have much. During those college and law school years, I probably didn't have a whole heck of a lot of social life. So I
Yeah.
didn't.
Well, that's interesting. Um, and still, I want to keep it kind of early in your life and looking at these things. And I just ask these questions because I kind of have an interest in some of this stuff, and I just wonder how it affected you. And I guess kind of on the other side of things, from maybe the country to rock and roll, I guess we could kind of talk maybe about folk music to rock and roll, and somebody that I know Granddad really liked and maybe even kind of identified with Woody Guthrie. You remember Woody Guthrie, who
I
he
remember, but
was?
I didn't know Granddad liked him.
Well, I mean, from what I remembered, Woody Guthrie and kind of Hank Williams Sr. was just kind of it, you
Yeah.
know, when it came to kind of, I guess maybe what, and I'm putting words in his mouth, but maybe what identified with Granddad as the regular man or the working man.
Well, I
Um,
know. I know. Later on, he liked Merle Haggard because of that
yeah,
very thing.
because of that very thing. Yeah, yeah. Um, and I was just wondering because during those kind of 50s, 60s, you kind of have Bob Dylan pushing back against some of that traditional folk music and kind of going electric. Um, and you were really young, obviously, but did any of that stuff break through to you? Were you aware of Bob Dylan in those early stages, or?
I knew some of the songs. I didn't know the name, but like the Vietnam thing was a big deal for us because brother got drafted in '65, '66, and because then I went into service right at the end of Vietnam, and so that whole the music that was concerned in Vietnam was a big deal to me, because I was in the middle of it, and not that I followed the news a whole lot, but in fact, I had brother in the military, and I was getting close to draft age, and so the Peter, Paul, and Mary, and those people made those were pretty uh, significant for me. Bobby Bear, I don't know if you remember a guy named Bobby Bear did a couple of songs. He had a, he was kind of rock and roll, but country. He was a country star. He was part of that outlaw group. I like Bobby Bear.
Yeah, and Peter, Paul, and Mary, they're certainly playing right on the line of folk music and early rock and roll, right?
Yeah,
Or maybe
yeah.
even more considered folk music. I don't, maybe.
It would have been. That's what I would have called them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and something I didn't realize until much later. You mentioned Peter, Paul, and Mary, but uh, John Denver wrote "Leaving on a Jet Plane,"
Yeah.
and that is just one of the most prettiest little and almost lonesome songs. You know,
Well,
written.
yeah, him and they're maybe not the same category, but to me they were was Glenn Campbell. Glenn Campbell is one of my favorite. The Galveston. Uh, the Monkees had a song out, "Last Train to Clarksville," that was along those same lines. Those type of things. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, what else? I mean, so we're talking about your young life and kind of still school age stuff. When do you remember getting into athletics? I know we've talked a little bit about how important football was for Uncle Donnie, and I know athletics in general um, has been instrumental in our family to kind of teach a lot of different things. And tell me kind of about your introduction to organized sports. I know you played football and basketball and a little baseball, right?
Yeah. And again, I think the influence a lot of it was from brother, just watching him, or because my memory was Friday nights. We would go see and brother play on at football at Smyrna High School. That was you just did that, and dad and mom were road trips. If they played some other town, they went. They were very supportive of that, which obviously affected me, and I thought, well, that's a good thing. So I need to do this. Uh, Probably the first organized thing I did was Little League baseball in Laverne, and I can't remember the coaches, but I, I think Gene Swafford. Did you ever know Gene Swafford? Went First
Yeah,
Baptist
I
School.
met him. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, he had a son James, my age, and another son Wayne, is a couple years younger than us, and a couple of girls. But they organized, in my memory, I think the first little league sports team in Laverne. And I don't know how they did it, but there was a company in Nashville called Wortham Bag, and I guess they made bags. I don't know. But anyway, they sponsored us, and we would go into Davidson County on Saturdays and have a game. And the park, I can't remember the name, but it was on the corner of Thompson Lane and I think Nolensville Road, uh, there in Davidson County, close to the state fairground, that
Hmm.
area. Uh, and so that's the first I recall being involved in sports, organized wise. Um, and did that for a few years, summertime. Uh, then I think sixth grade was the first school organized sport. Then Laverne and I can't remember the guy's name now, but he organized. They had a basketball team, and uh, and so I made the basketball team. And Laverne, we didn't have a gym or anything. We would play any games we happened to have at home. We played in the schoolroom lunchroom.
Hmm.
They put the tables up and put a goal on either end.
Hmm.
And if you went for a layup on one end, you probably ended up on the stage.
Oh Lord. Oh. What do
It was,
you
I got to
remember
tell you,
of?
this is funny though. I don't know if I ever tell, but we Walter Hill had a a little team, and we went over and played. And their gym was an old barn, literally, and they put down a wood floor, but there were places in that wood floor were dead. And if you were dribbling and running down the floor and didn't know where it was, all of a sudden you were gone. The ball's still behind you dribbling. Home court advantage.
Yeah, kind of remind me of the old floor at the community center there in Cleveland.
Yeah.
If you could get somebody cornered in that one spot, they're liable to lose the ball for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good. That was fun, and so that was pretty much it until Laverne went through the 8th grade, and then ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th grade we went to Smyrna, and so going to Smyrna, I think they just built Thurman Francis Junior High School. And it may have been the first year the 9th grade actually went to the junior high. It was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade at Thurman Francis. And then the high school was 10, 11, 12. But myself and Wayne Blair and a guy named Harry Hollins and seemed like there was somebody else, we went from Laverne to Smyrna to play football. Because we kind of knew what it was, but never played organized football before. But we were pretty good sized boys, and they welcomed us on the football team. I'm not so sure they thought too much about us being from Laverne, but we were pretty good sized boys and somewhat athletic, not talented per se, but had a really good team. I was telling Elisa the other day, I don't know why I brought this up. I think probably because of the conversation you and I've had reminded me of some stuff. But the very first time I ever knew there was such a thing as a shower was when we went to Thurman Francis Junior High School to the locker room. We never had a shower at home. We had
Yeah,
a bathtub.
yeah,
And then I realized I got all the hot water I want. This is great. You for no other reason to play football, having a hot shower.
get a shower. Get a shower. That's interesting. Well, so I want to back up just a little bit, and I really kind of the question that I'm going to ask kind of applies to a couple of things we're talking about. But back to this basketball team, what did basketball look like then compared to maybe what we know as the modern game? How was it? Was it a more of a half court type offense strictly?
Yeah, I mean, there was such a thing as a fast break, but that was really only if you had a advantage. If you had a 2-on-1 or 3-on-2, because nowadays, at least I think the progressive basketball is you're always running. You're always, it's a fast break, and you do picks off a fast break, and and that certainly wasn't way. We did a fast break, but it wasn't as much, and you did have a lot of half court offense.
And what did that look like?
Defense would have been primarily the same, though.
Was there a 3-point line? What was the strategy?
No.
How did that look? What did the offense look like?
It depended upon whether the defense was going man to man or zone. But if it was for a zone against a zone defense, you would fundamentally pass to one side to get the defense to move, overload the other side, come back quickly, and get somebody open on an overload. That was fundamentally it. Man to man, pretty much like it is now. Pick and roll, give and goes. But and a lot of stuff off the ball. Pecks off the ball. So I don't think the man to man stuff has changed as far as just the concept.
It's just a little faster, maybe.
A lot faster, yeah.
And was there a lot of mid range jump shots, or was it to the basket, crash the board? What were y'all looking for?
Uh,
Pick and
yeah,
pop.
in my mind, what ultimately wanted was a 6 foot shot or closer. It was frowned upon to take a long shot, which of course there's no 3 point grind. So and the rebound and the boards were very significant, which as they are now if you think about it. But a lot of points scored off the boards.
Well, that's cool, and I want to dive more into that maybe a little bit later, and maybe just kind of looking at your experience and that progression of basketball from that early on into high school, and even your collegiate experience. But kind of before we get into that, let's talk about that early experience in football. And so you really now you say you didn't really have any experience, but I'm sure that y'all were playing some kind of football at recess times, maybe,
Oh
or
yeah, yeah,
like at the
absolutely.
games on Friday nights. I remember particularly like Cleveland high school games when I was a kid. You know, over on that hill, all us kids were playing some kind of two-hand touch while the big game was going on. Was that kind of the culture around
Ab-
Smyrna and Laverne? Tell me about that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, when brother played, uh, they were my memory. They were really good. I'm thinking maybe his senior year they went undefeated. I mean, they were a good team. So that was the if you were anywhere on Friday night, you were at a football game. And so yeah, and we played a lot of backyard football, and watch the Packers on TV and Johnny Unitas with the Colts, and so yeah, we knew about it, but actually having done it had not.
Yeah. And so when y'all were playing kind of unorganized, where would you fall in things? Would y'all play tackle? Would you be blocking on the offense, or would you be throwing or
Well, it
receiving?
depended upon which group of people you was playing with. If I was
Sure.
playing with the guys that were bigger than me, you're kind of just out there in the way, on blocking or getting in the way of somebody rocking. But if you're playing guys, your contemporaries, uh, probably ended up throwing the ball a lot. I think I ended up at least in the backyard. Now I did not do that obviously when I got playing organized sports, but uh,
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about that first. So you didn't really get to start playing football until high school, is that correct?
well, ninth grade, which would have been the when I
Last
went,
part of junior high.
yeah.
Last part of junior high. And that was kind of to feeding into this Smyrna High School program that had kind of developed maybe the 5 to 6 years prior to you coming to the program, right? You,
Well, I don't know. I think it had been probably bigger longer than that, but it definitely had been. Yes. Yeah.
so what was it like going onto that football team? I know, particularly, and you made a little bit of mention of it of y'all being from Laverne. So to me, that tells me that there's some tension between Smyrna and Laverne. Uh,
Yeah.
tell me about that. Talk to me about that.
Well, I'm going to tell you some of these things I didn't realize till later on, but we were kind of from the wrong side of the tracks. Of course, brother had done well, and I think maybe having a brother that played well, and there was some other guys from Laverne that were older than us that had played and done well, so it, it wasn't unusual for us to go play, but we had
Now,
not
when
been
you say the
exposed to it.
wrong side of the tracks, I mean I kind of understand maybe in Laverne, kind of maybe is traditionally a lower socioeconomic area compared to Smyrna, but were there troublemakers from Laverne? Was there some kind of reputation, even if maybe it wasn't deserved? was there a thought that, hey, those guys might cause trouble in our locker room or not do right? Was there any of that, or were they
I
just
don't
kind
know
of
that
looking down?
I don't know that the locker room per se, but I think that it was, again, looking back at it, I think there was this idea that uh, those guys from Laverne don't mind to get in a fight,
Yeah, yeah.
kind of thing, and and it may have been accurate. I never. I think I was in maybe two or three fights in my high school time, so it wasn't. I mean, I didn't think of that as being a big thing, but looking back at it, maybe it was. But
No.
uh, I think the socio-economic thing was probably bigger. I don't remember. I didn't remember having the idea that anybody had a vehicle to drive to school until I went to Smyrna High School, and then I was saying there's guys here that's going to class with that drive in their own car. I mean, it just never occurred to me, and it just the clothes. We didn't have a lot. What we had was well kept, but it was a blue jeans and a shirt was pretty much what we wore. Uh,
Was going to Smyrna High School kind of an awakening for you to that maybe different social demographics and a social hierarchy?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that was probably the first time I even give it any consideration. And I'll be honest with you, I was shy around females because I just knew that they wouldn't think too much of Laverne, and we didn't have any money anyway, so I wouldn't like I had an option to do anything with them because it took money, and we didn't have any of that.
Was that a tough transition into high school?
You know, I don't really think so. I think I had probably self confidence, maybe because of the fact that I had the lineage. A brother had been there before, and of course, my cousin Judy was between brother and me, who was at Smyrna High School, and both of them were very well thought of. And so, no,
Judy
probably
went
not.
to Smyrna.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. Um, we'll talk about your transition into the locker room. Did the other guys give you any grief? Maybe not just because you were from Laverne, but just being underclassmen. What do you remember any maybe what we'd call hazing or bullying?
Well, not till 10th grade, because ninth grade we were the big dogs on the block.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
but learning how to put on the equipment was a, a revolutionary idea to me. Back in the day when I played, you had what we call hip pads, and put them on, and then you put your pants on over them. And the hip pads had a pad down either side and around the back on the tailbone. I know what those were. We had no idea, and so we're trying to figure out how to put these blame things on. Well, it made more sense to me to put where that tailbone was, to put it on my front. So I'm trying to put these pants on with this thing, with the hip pads on backwards.
Yeah.
That yeah, that was yeah, that was funny. Um, I think having an open shower, where a bunch of guys, and it didn't really bother me, but I just never, seen that before. But I really did like the idea of having all the hot water I wanted. So that was, yeah, that was different. But nobody, I don't, no, I don't remember anybody making fun of us or anything. I mean, putting the equipment on backwards was funny, but it was funny. I mean,
Yeah. Well, what about getting into 10th grade football? What was that like? Well, that was a little bit more serious than ninth grade, I guess.
it was, and recognizing the difference in size because the seniors were pretty good sized boys, and we were still, you know, not so big,
Yeah.
and So there was a bit of, people picking on you and stuff, but it was sort of to be expected, and you got to earn your right to be there, and it wasn't terrible, but
Well, and how did you do? Did you get any reps early on? Did you play as an underclassman or an upperclassman? What was the high school career like?
well, 10th grade I got in a bit. You had to back in the day. It was kind of a big honor to get a letter. It had the S for Smyrna. It was, and if you got this letter, you could put it on a sweater or jacket or something. But you just didn't get one by participating. You had to, for us, to earn a letter, you had to play it at least in 16 quarters. And so uh, that was a pretty, and I think the coach tried to get everybody in just a little bit for every quarter, just so you could get that. But yeah, I got to play a bit. I didn't start, but I got in a lot, mostly on defense. I played DN uh, all the way through, and then I played offensive center. Uh, but I didn't start center until my junior year.
Okay. And how were those Smyrna teams during your high school year? Did y'all have any success as a team?
Awful,
Oh,
awful. What had happened? We had a really, really good, talented bunch of guys in ninth grade, and had that group got to stay together, we probably would have been as good as anybody they ever had. But what happened was there was an Air Force base in Smyrna called Seward Air Force Base, and probably 70% of those kids were Air Force. They had Air Force parents. Well, the Air Force closed down,
ah,
and all 70% of our team was gone,
oh
and
man.
and so yeah, that was devastating.
And that's probably what really started the rebuilding process
Yeah, that was when
that
the coach
maybe Uncle
decided
Donnie
that,
is instrumental in later.
exactly. Well, that was when the coach, and I don't blame him a bit, but a guy named Robert Rake, called Bud Rakes, and you may have met, one of Donnie's idols, and a good guy, and I respect him. He ended up being the principal at Smyrna for a while, uh, but he was the head coach, and he made that decision to get out of football and stick just with basketball.
Oh,
And I look back on it, that was, not stupid on his part.
a little more strategy in there than anything else, though, maybe.
Yeah, because at the time you didn't know it, but looking back at it, obviously what it was.
All right, well, that's really cool, man. I appreciate you sharing with me today. Um, we've been talking for a good little bit again, and we'll get together and do this again. Uh, Once again, this is Maxwell 3000 Productions. I'm here with Wayne Carter. We appreciate y'all checking us out.